This is MFG Out Loud. Courageous conversations about sales and marketing for today's manufacturers. With your hosts, Ray Zaganto and Allison DeFore.
Hey, Trailblazers. Welcome to another episode. This will be number 22, if I'm not mistaken, of MFG Out Loud. And if I do say so myself, they keep getting better and better. And the reason is because our guests are getting progressively more awesome. And today's not going to be a letdown either. So Allison and I are thrilled to welcome our special guest today, Mr. Mike Cromheecke. I'm going to blow it, aren't I? Cromheecke. Did I get it?
No, that's a pretty good attempt. That's a pretty good attempt. Appreciate it. It's Michael Cromheecke. Thank you.
Cromheecke. There we go. Michael Cromheecke. And I just asked you this. Anyway.
Come on.
We just practiced. Yeah, something to be said there. But anyway, hey, listen. Forget about that part. Remember this part. Michael is the CEO of a really cool company called SteamChain. And what we want to talk about today is kind of that intersection of really advanced innovation and technology and how it's going to impact manufacturing companies' ability to grow, just do some stuff different, and really be creative. Let me give you some background here. Mike has 17 years of experience at Rockwell Automation. His background includes acquisition and growth of early-stage robotic technology companies, creation and development of multi-million-dollar cloud-based software platforms, degree in mechanical engineering from Michigan Technical University. So he's got he checks all of the boxes, right? You've got that whole credibility thing and the resume branding that you'd want to see. Here's the reality. I'm kind of a geek for this whole technology and manufacturing space. This is a guy that has helped some of the most advanced manufacturing companies in the world get that way. So it always helps to interact with people that know what good or better or best is supposed to look like. Mike's one of those guys. Allison and I were introduced to him through our good friend Chris Lukey, and I think Chris has interviewed Mike. He's either talked to you or he talked to Zach, one of your guys. I think on one of his trips up into the Milwaukee area, and I had heard about this machinery as a service type thing, and I was like, "What?" And started doing some digging, and here we are, and we just cannot wait to share you and reveal SteamChain to our audience. SteamChain's been making waves and a name in the advanced manufacturing space. So we thought, as I say, this is a company that our listeners need to know about. Mike, I'm going to let you properly introduce SteamChain to our listeners. But first, we want to welcome you and say how thrilled we are to have you on MFG Out Loud.
Well, thank you so much, Ray. I appreciate the invitation to come and join you guys and talk a little bit about our company and what we're trying to do with SteamChain and the concept of machine as a service in the manufacturing sector. I appreciate the wonderful intro, and I certainly have had an interesting and exciting career so far, and my 17 years at Rockwell Automation, I can't say enough about what a pleasure it was to work for those guys. And to have all the opportunities that they afforded me to get involved so deeply into, the high-tech area of advanced manufacturing. So I certainly owe them a great deal in terms of creating opportunities for me to get out there and learn this market, learn this industry, and learn a lot about the machine builders and the operators of this advanced manufacturing equipment. And I'm really looking forward to talking to your audience about why we think SteamChain is a big deal and why we think machine as a service is the right application for IoT technology. And right now is a time that really needs that kind of capability that is afforded by machine as a service.
Well, there's no better segue than the one you've just provided. What is it? What is machinery as a service? How does SteamChain fit in? Lead us off.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way to think about machine as a service is that it's a business model for the procurement, maintenance, and operation of industrial equipment, right? And it shares in many ways the same characteristics as other as-a-service business models that you can point to that have been successful in many other industries. So whether you're talking about office printers traditionally or jet engines with Rolls-Royce's program, back in the day, or how people predominantly buy IT hardware today. This concept that instead of paying for the capital asset, you create programs that allow you to pay for the results or the service that's provided by those assets is exactly what we're talking about here with machine as a service in the manufacturing segment. And SteamChain's role in that, we built an automated business process utility that makes it easy for manufacturers of industrial equipment to create commercial programs on this as a service concept. And we call this capability the secure transaction engine for automated machinery, or for those that like acronyms, that's the STEAM in SteamChain, if you will.
Cool.
And what we do is we manage the data flow from the IoT on the machine, from the data generated on the industrial assets. We manage that through our automated business process all the way up to and including the clearing of the financial transactions between the parties that are engaged in these as-a-service business models, taking what used to be a very bureaucratically complicated thing to deploy in the highly fragmented manufacturing space and boiling it down to its essence in a highly automated way, so that these business models, these as-a-service business models that have been successful in other industries, are now feasible and reasonable to deploy in the context of advanced manufacturing.
That's cool. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Part of what's really cool, I know you guys were recently featured in Packaging Digest. Did a really interesting story on machine as a service, and I know SteamChain was featured very, very heavily in that. So you've kind of spoken to the tech guys, and you've spoken a little bit to the finance guys. If I'm an ops guy, or I own a manufacturing business, how is this really going to benefit for me? Break it down to kind of nuts and bolts. Hey, what does this really mean? What can I do now that I couldn't do before?
Yeah, for an end user that's looking to acquire equipment, right? The process today is a milestone-based capital procurement process that's really been unchanged since Industry 1.0 or the Industrial Revolution, right? And that capital procurement process makes a lot of sense. It's a method by which you acquire an asset, and the risk associated with acquiring that asset gets transferred one direction and the capital goes the other. So at the culmination of what today we would call the factory acceptance test process and the site acceptance test process, the end user has confirmed that the machine meets their specifications, it's performing with the uptime, with the throughput, with all the other critical metrics that they had contracted for. And at that point, all the capital is in their OEM's hands, and the transfer of the asset occurs, and the end user owns the risk of the performance of that asset for the next 7, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever the useful life of that asset is. And so when you look at the relationship today and you say, how could we do that better? We think you can do that better by more accurately measuring the return that you're looking to get from that asset, right? The outcome, right? Because everybody's that's been involved in this industry for any amount of time realizes that how that machine runs day one, when they do the final sign off, and the economic value that machine creates over the life cycle of the asset might not be completely aligned. You may start running into performance issues, throughput issues, training issues for your operators, any number of things. When you talk about this kind of complex manufacturing equipment, there's way more that goes into the equation of your return on investment than just, can the OEM get the thing run into my facility long enough for us to stand around with a clipboard, check the boxes, and then separate our relationship, right? And so instead of putting all your time and energy into the pre-qualifying of the OEMs and evaluating the return on investment, because you're making such a extraordinary investment in this technology, what if you were able to pay for the results that machine produced over the entire life cycle or over a contract term that helps you align the performance of the asset to the payments that you're making to support that asset?
And that's fundamentally what we're talking about with machine as a service. It takes many different forms, but it creates the opportunity to contract on the outcome as opposed to contract for the delivery of a machine, which for that operations guy you talked about, for those business leaders out there, the net impact of that is that they're taking less risk because they're sharing that risk with their OEM. They're sharing that risk with the other counterparties that have incentives to help them achieve their performance target on that machine, and their financial payments are pegged or tied to the achievement of the outcome that you really care about. It goes back to the old analogy, Ray, like, people don't buy drills if they can buy holes, right? Yeah. If your problem is you need more holes, a drill may be your right solution, right? But it also might be somebody to come in and put a few holes where you need them. And in today's world, you only have one option. You have the traditional capital acquisition process for industrial equipment that has been essentially unchanged since Industry 1.0, and is still predominantly 99.9% of machinery manufacturers. That's the way they deliver, because that's really the only option available to them. What we've done is really look at how we can leverage all the advancements in connected machinery, IoT technology, to change the relationship and create new business models based on that data.
That's awesome. That is cool. You also, you'd mentioned that from, and I know I'm getting a little bit off track here, but it's just fascinating. The things haven't evolved much from Industry 1.0 to where we are now. But there really was a pivotal event, and as you talked about, where SteamChain is able to come in with the technology stack that allows kind of the clearing of the transactions, and that's a relatively new phenomenon that is allowing more broader introduction of machinery as a service, right?
Yeah, I mean, Ray, when I was at Rockwell, I was really spending a lot of time investigating IoT technology, Industrial Internet of Things, right, or Industry 4.0. And I was hearing about all the use cases and the way people thought that they'd create value by connecting machines to the internet and collecting big data. And, there's artificial intelligence and lots of buzzwords about how this is going to, create value for everybody. And as I unpacked those opportunities and talked to a lot of startup companies, talked to a lot of industry experts, what I realized is that, they're really leading with technology and not with a business model. And so it's all sorts of useful things that we could conceivably do that conceivably add value with no mechanism for how you bake that into the process so that there's a revenue stream associated with the deployment of the technology. And that really got me to thinking is, we have all this rich data. So many companies have created, new, better, faster, more secure ways to create transparency or to create visibility to the data on those machines. But we haven't taken the next step and figured out how we use that data to improve how people are incentivized, how people work together, how the people that really impact the performance of the assets collaborate over the life cycle of that asset. And so that's what led us to this idea of, maybe this is the way that you use, that you leverage the IoT to create real business value, not just for the people that are buying the equipment, but they're also the people that are selling the equipment. But of course, we started looking at that, we started peeling back the onion, and we realized in order to use that data in a way that drives financial transactions, gosh, that data needs to be highly secure. It needs to be transparent to both parties so that both parties are very confident that the data that they're looking at, the provenance of that goes all the way back to the specific time on the specific machine that data was collected. They need to be very confident that data is resilient and available to both parties or all parties in the contract, whether that's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now, so that they have an audit trail that they're comfortable with. And we realized that's the problem that you need to solve, right? We've been able to collect the data for some time, but how do you take that data and turn it into data that's able to drive financial transactions in a highly objective, highly transparent, highly resilient way? And it occurred to us, at the time it was all, blockchain was the biggest news in the world, right? It was on the cover of Wall Street Journal and CNN and everywhere else you could look about how it's game-changing technologies, how it's a game-changing technology. And we really connected the dots, not on the cryptocurrency side, not on how it's financed and paid for and all that. What we connected the dots on are the same challenges associated with creating a cryptocurrency, right? Transparency, objectivity, resilience. They're the same challenges we're talking about on how to create machine as a service. So we haven't created a cryptocurrency company. We use blockchain technology because it has the same characteristics that are important to us that also enable it to manage cryptocurrency networks. We just happen to repurpose the database technology, right? Because those characteristics are also really important to the various different counterparties that would be involved in a machine as a service agreement. And so our platform and our automated business process literally takes the data from the machine, stores it into a resilient, objective, transparent record, and the agreement between the parties also exists in that same data structure. So once that agreement is approved, that agreement will never change, and everybody will always have independent and objective access to the agreement, and independent and objective access to the data that feeds the agreement, and independent and objective and transparent visibility to the financial transactions that are created when it's converted through the use of that smart contract. And so we end up with an end-to-end business process that's available to everybody that's a party to the agreement, where they can share in the data and see the same trends and understand how their finances are impacted based on the performance of the machine, and really collaborate as partners, because well-designed machine as a service contracts ensure that both parties win financially when the goals of the project are met. And both parties suffer financial concerns when it's not, creating true alignment of interests, right? So that they're working to the same effect, to the same end, as opposed to what we see way too much of today, Ray, which is when something starts going wrong, everybody's pointing the finger and everybody's got a theory about why it occurred.
Yeah.
And with these highly technical, highly sophisticated machines, gosh, early in my career, I spent, years and years working between those parties to try and get them to understand that their interests are actually completely aligned, and they need to figure out how to work together if they want to optimize the performance of the assets. So I'll wrap it up, Ray, on this subject by saying that, there's a lot of IoT companies out there, and I know I can go on and on. There's a lot of IoT companies out there that collect data. Yeah. Right. And there's a lot of people that are really focused, and we believe long term as well that you're going to be able to deploy artificial intelligence and pattern recognition, big data and analytics, and all the buzzwords that everybody loves to talk about. But we still believe that the people, and appropriately incentivizing the organizations that are in the best position to optimize the performance of these assets and ensure that they're rewarded to do so, is the best way to improve the productivity of these industrial assets. We believe machine as a service creates those business models that create those incentives and link these partners together, because that's what they truly are, partners in the performance of these industrial machines for everybody's benefit.
Well, I have a question. Knowing that this is that many manufacturers are somewhat resistant to change, I'll say.
Yeah.
What kind of blockades have you run into? What kind of resistance, or if any? I mean, because this is
So you're Allison. I was going to make a joke about how manufacturing is completely on the cutting edge all the time. But I'll skip that for now. I mean, I think everybody that's worked in this industry for a while realizes that the pace of change in manufacturing is relatively slow. Usually, especially in the last number of decades, the technology comes from other markets, and then it's adopted and appropriated for manufacturing, not the other way around. In many ways, we're no different. Right. As a service business models are highly successful in many other industries, which is why it's so attractive for us to look at how we make that work in manufacturing. And of course, we've had to use some new technology to make the fit right and to make it perform correctly. So you asked about the resistance of the market, and I'm going to answer it in a couple of different ways. Because right now it's kind of a unique time, right? There's a lot of market dynamics at work. There's a lot of change in the world. And so in some ways we're seeing the impact of that. People are definitely getting more interested and more eager to figure out what the new dynamic is going to look like. So to a degree, the amount of resistance or kind of organizational inertia that we're traditionally used to facing is easing a little bit for us, and we think that's a good trend. But in general, anytime you try and change the behavior of an existing status quo, especially something as large as how manufacturers, purchase capital equipment, and something that's existed for as long as their current processes have existed, we don't so much see specific resistance as we see questions. We see people asking, how does that impact me? What do I need to be planning for? How do I put together a program like this? What does that do to the accounting? And so we've been working through those questions with a number of different partners, both on the OEM and the end user side. Really what we see as the biggest hurdle is education, is creating awareness and making people aware of what they can do and helping to coach and educate them on how this makes their jobs easier, how it makes acquiring the assets that they need in their organization to continue to further their growth faster, more responsive, how it allows them to invest in maybe cutting edge technology that they would have perceived as a little bit too risky because, it's not as proven as we'd like it to be. And so before we drop the $2 million on that new technology, we're going to wait for somebody else to do it, right? When you start to shift to the mindset, I'm paying for the outcome, and the technology supports that outcome, right? But I'm paying for what I get. And the OEM tells me they want to put the fanciest high-speed new servo motion robotic artificial intelligence actuator program in place to achieve that. Well, if they're putting their money where their mouth is on that technology, gosh, and if they're coming with the best price point on a per unit produced, that's better than what we're seeing today on our existing lines, how do I say no to that, right? Again, it's shifting the risk profile of acquiring advanced technology and creating opportunities on the OEM and the end user side. So for us, it's all about education. Right? It's helping people understand that by changing the game, it actually creates a lot of opportunities, and it makes it easier for them to move faster to their desired goal of a more automated, more efficient operating facility.
And as because a lot of what you say makes sense to me. For the listeners who are completely unfamiliar with this, and I'm going to throw you I don't think it'll be a zinger, but just a question about cost. So is this a service that's, and I know it varies depending on the company and the equipment, and et cetera, but is this something that's like, top tier, incredibly expensive, multi-million dollar, or is this like, where does it fall?
So, at SteamChain, we like to put our money where our mouth is too. And so when we put together machine as a service programs, we don't charge for that. What we charge for is best way to think of us. Let's start there. Best way to think of us is the transaction processor. And so we take a transaction fee to execute those transactions on our platform. And so in many ways, the way to think of us is like Visa or MasterCard or American Express, right? We don't own the grocery store. We don't shop at the grocery store. But the infrastructure that Visa and MasterCard and those folks created to allow people the convenience of using a piece of plastic versus carry around dollars is funded based on transaction fees, right? They take a percentage of the transaction that flows. If our solution does not provide value, and people aren't buying, if they're not using the SteamChain platform, it doesn't work out for them, they're not paying for it. They're only paying for it when they're receiving value because they're using that transaction service, they're using that data, et cetera, et cetera. So we think that's very aligned with the interests of both parties and supports our growth and development of the platform. not just for one company, but for all the companies that utilize our technology.
Love it. That makes sense.
So, Mike, you'll be approached. We've talked before, but help clarify this one. So, it's conceivable that you can be approached by a manufacturer that is looking to explore machinery as a service, and you'll also talk to the machinery builders themselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a two-sided market that way, right?
Okay.
And so, we engage with anybody that has an interest in these business models. Oftentimes, it'll be an end user that comes in and says, "Hey, we love it. We want to acquire some equipment, and we'd like to introduce you to our suppliers, our OEMs that we work with." And the three of us work out a program for us. That often leads to that OEM offering a similar program to their other clients.
There you go.
And so that's great for us. We love working that way. We, as an organization, go out and really work with the OEMs themselves. So we get inbound from end users, but our primary go-to-market strategy right now is to sit down with OEMs and say, "Hey, let's build a program together. Let's define the financial goals. Let's define how it's going to work and what kind of offering you're going to put together." Because again, it's not just the machine you're selling.
Mm-hmm.
It's the machine, it's the warranty, it's the support, it's the remote monitoring, it's the deployment of technology on that machine now and in the future, right? It's you are essentially selling a partnership to help your customer achieve the results that they're looking for, which is driving them to invest in the machine in the first place.
Right.
Let's put that together on an operating cost for them, or a combination of capital and operating costs. So we can be very flexible in how we architect it. And then that becomes a standard commercial program. We've got a number of companies that are providing this option to their clients today. If anybody's in the market for case packing, case directing, secondary packaging equipment, Pearson Packaging has a wonderfully generous machine as a service program. And we'd encourage people to check that out. Robex for robotic systems integration. Folks that are right now, everybody's trying to run canning lines. Our friends at ProBrew have extraordinary programs, not just for their canning lines, but for their entire brew house solutions. And the list goes on and on. So there's an increasing number of OEM clients that we have out in the world that are offering these programs. And of course, the more end users learn about the benefits to their business, the more we're getting approached by them to, go talk to their suppliers and get them involved in these types of programs as well.
Let's put a finer point on it. An example. It's a typical example that not might occur. I know you have them. You have clients out there. What does the relationship look like? I know we talk about you're buying outcomes and those types of things, but walk us through a real world scenario. You can change the names to protect the innocent, whatever you need to, but just so our listeners really understand, hey, this is how this works. At the end of the day, this is what it means.
Yeah, I mean, an easy one here. And again, before I go through a specific example, it's important for me to point out that every program is different, right? We can customize these programs and bring in all sorts of terms, to suit the parties. And the example I'm going to give is Pearson Packaging. They have an extraordinarily generous machine as a service program. For qualified customers, they will supply the equipment, no upfront costs. No cost to deliver the equipment, no cost to set it up in the customer's facility and turn it on. The customer pays for every case produced on the equipment. And it's pennies, if that, fractions of pennies. And they can run it for as long as they want. They can run it as fast or as slow as they want. And when they're done with it, whenever that is, they can return it. And the program terminates. So in many ways, think about it like you're hiring a robot as an operating expense to produce boxes at a fixed per box rate. And that's it. It's that simple. It's easy to acquire the assets. Pearson Packaging looks at it as the more of these machines we put out in the world, right? We're gonna run them. They're gonna generate cash for us. If somebody's done with it, we're gonna send it to the next customer. We'll refresh it and move it on. They look at it as kind of managing a fleet of useful assets.
Mhm.
that they're constantly recirculating so that people have the flexibility to get the production capacity they need when they need it, where they need it, how they need it. And you don't have to worry about, can my maintenance team manage this asset? Is this thing going to be a reliable runner? Am I going to have a lot of costs associated with breakdowns? Is it going to achieve the throughput? You're literally just counting the number of boxes and paying for it right out of your operating budget. So that's one easy example. We've got other clients. Robex does far more complex, customized solutions. Where they'll come in and they'll do an entire end of line solution for a company, and they'll include the equipment that they'll design, build, and deliver, the maintenance agreement for that equipment over its life cycle, over the contract life cycle, and the operators that will run the equipment in your facility. So it looks like a complete outsourcing of your manufacturing in a way that's in your facility, under your control, without having to deal with the complex logistics of doing third-party packaging, co-packing, third-party manufacturing. But you're essentially entering into the same contract, but it's in your facility, managed by your OEM, who designs and builds the equipment to achieve the performance and the price point that you need.
That's awesome.
So a couple of examples, and they run the gamut, right? We have another client that focuses specifically on feature management, which is something we haven't talked about today yet. But in addition to kind of looking at it from the context of the machine sale, is one lens to look at opportunities for machine as a service. One of our clients uses it to enable customers to turn on and off advanced functionality on an existing machine. Nice. And pay for it as they use that functionality.
Oh, wow.
He used to have 3 different lines, right? 3 different machines in his lineup: a low-end machine, a mid-range machine, and a high-end machine. Mm-hmm. And the difference was performance and functionality, right? He laughed. He said, "Look, Mike, at the end of the day, don't tell anybody." So I won't use his name. Don't tell anybody, but my machines cost about the same to build. It actually cost me more to build 3 different machines than one machine, because I have to go out of my way to make them look different so people feel like they're buying something different. But the difference between these machines is fundamentally software. Mm-hmm. And we've invested a lot in software. So I can't give the software away for free and charge the price of the low-end machine. I have to have a way to recognize that revenue, against my cost for developing that software. So, but what it created for him is operational complexity, and quite frankly, it didn't really meet his customers where they wanted to be, because he's forcing the decision right up front to say, what machine do you want, and therefore what capacity? And if I really want the high-end machine, but I can afford the low-end machine now, and I'm not sure I need it. So what he's done is compress that all into one machine.
Yeah.
A machine that runs a fee management contract that allows you to turn those capabilities on and off. So now my operation is simpler because I'm just building one machine. My customer's buying decision is a lot simpler, right? And they're buying this like a regular capital asset, mm-hmm. right? So we're not impacting how they do the upfront purchasing of the machine, mm-hmm. but we are using machine as a service to allow them to upgrade that machine once it's installed, and to turn on that capability and capacity and feature set over the life cycle of the project, generating a whole new revenue stream for him and solving a lot of problems. So when I say there's a lot of unique business models, right, there are a lot of unique business models. And a challenge that we face is, of course, that, educating the end users, the OEMs, about the opportunities that are created when you start thinking differently about how you manage these assets and focus on managing them against performance metrics versus, trying to do all the due diligence to figure out everything you need to know to make the one right decision and lay the capital down and hope for the best, mm-hmm. right? That's what we really change. And that's what we work with our clients, whether they be end users or OEMs, to develop.
That's huge. As I just think of, the opportunities that exist. There's so many combinations and permutations of how you can look at this. Number one, moving it from a CapEx to an OpEx decision itself is a game changer.
It is.
But then looking again at companies, if I'm going to be the end user of one of these lines, or in these scenarios, if I've got a factory full of let's say equipment that's not the most state of the art,
Mhm.
but I happen to have access to a blue chip customer. Believe me, that's the hard part. But
Mhm.
what enters into a lot of competitive things is if you don't happen to have the latest competition, if somebody else comes in that has that relationship, you're kind of screwed. Now you're extending the value that, if it's my manufacturing company, I can now go to you and say, hey, my CapEx budget might be locked, but I've got an avenue forward to bring state of the art technology in to stay relevant to my customers and perhaps grow at a time when others are struggling. Right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right. It really changes the dynamic in a way that makes it more flexible, more scalable.
Yeah.
We see our mission as nothing less than improving the efficiency by which advanced manufacturing technology gets deployed in this country.
Yeah.
Right. We see a market opportunity for everybody, bringing manufacturing back in house, back under their control. But in order to do that, they need to invest a tremendous amount of capital in industrial automation. One way to do that is with machine as a service, and to do that in a way that you're not risking the capital. You're working with partners, including third-party financing firms that we bring to link together the balance sheets of the OEMs who can't, give away machines for free forever,
Right.
based on an annuity model, right?
Yeah.
They can't have all that sitting on their balance sheet. So we don't just have flexibility in terms of how we design the contracts. We have flexibility in terms of how we set up and structure the financing with our solutions. And so we consult and work on all of that and put those programs together. So we're addressing the technology needs, we're addressing the production needs, we're addressing the financial needs of our partners.
That's cool.
Well, I hate to stop us, but and I don't know about you, Ray, but I have brain burn. Like we should have given a warning at the beginning, like put your or your ear covering.
Something.
Yeah, amazing. And I want to throw this out, being the marketing geek that I am. Kudos to you, Michael, for, I don't know if you developed your unique value proposition or if you worked with somebody to do it, but I want everyone listening to pay attention, like go to steamchain.io and look at this and see how brilliant it is. And I'm going to read it to you. I had to write it down. SteamChain harnesses machine performance data to reimagine how manufacturers and end users collaborate, invest, and grow. Bra fucking vo. That is so so good. I wish I had written it myself, but I cannot take any credit.
Well, thank you. I mean, and again, I'll go back to the hardest part that we face as a business right now, as a startup company, right? Trying to get the word out there, and the concept is so big and it's so multifaceted and it touches so many different things, but yet it can be deployed in the smallest of scenarios, right? It's a capability that as soon as you start thinking about what I can do with it, I can do all sorts of very interesting things. And so, getting that message right is important to us. And thank you for the attaboy on that. It means a lot coming from a marketing professional. I very much appreciate the value of the marketing folks, and I'd love to take credit for writing that. But I honestly can't say that I did. I can't say that I didn't either. We've gone through so many different iterations with working with so many folks on our team, and so I'll give the whole team credit for that one. But boiling it down to its essence and explaining what it is in a way that it doesn't seem abstract,
right?
In a way that it doesn't seem hard to connect with, is a constant struggle and a continued struggle for our business. But the more engagement we get from our customers and the more use cases and all the positive news that we're generating with what we're doing, I mean, it just contributes to this being adopted as a viable way of doing things that solve a tremendous number of challenges that we think slow this industry down.
Yeah.
And let's not let Industry 1.0 get in the way of Industry 4.0 here. Right? If we want to be Industry 4.0 and we want all these great values,
we have to think about it not in terms of the bolt-on technology. We have to think about it in terms of how it impacts everything we do from the ground up, from the point we acquire technology all the way through its total cost of ownership over its entire life cycle. And that's what we're passionate about at SteamChain. And that's what we help our clients enable.
Well, and making it so easy that your grandma can understand it. That's the ticket, honestly.
That is always the ticket.
That is what anything that looks easy and succinct and simple is the hardest thing to do. So, again, I encourage anybody listening that you check this out at their site. It's brilliant. And I can't thank you enough for being here and hanging out with us, me and this crazy dude.
You guys are a lot of fun. You must really enjoy doing this.
We do. We get to meet cool people. Are you kidding?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun for me, man. I enjoy just having the conversation, right?
Awesome.
Appreciate the opportunity to come speak with you guys today.
You are an incredibly intelligent human, and I think
I'm going to get that printed on a T-shirt.
You should. I'm going to send that to you. No, I just feel really grateful to bring people like you to our audience that's continuing to grow because, and again, the reason that we started this podcast was we had all these stories and all these relationships with people. And then when we would share them with, say, a client or a colleague and say, well, you know, like the guys at SteamChain, they're like, who? What? You don't know? Let me tell you. So we thought this is our platform because people need to know about machine service.
Yeah.
So,
and you guys are a critical element of anybody's digital marketing strategy, especially now with the traditional marketing programs and marketing strategies really under pressure.
Yep.
With the state of affairs in the world today. The big trade show budgets are not long for this world.
Yeah.
And so, ways to get the message out there. I think this is a very interesting program that you guys have, and we certainly appreciate the invitation to come and participate. And we look forward to watching more of what you guys do and see what other great ideas are out there in manufacturing. So we'll definitely help promote it for you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the brain burn. And so we're going to sign off. If you are not already subscribed, and Michael, you better be, get your butt over to mfgoutloud.com and subscribe to our Courageous Conversations newsletter, and then also subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And leave a review if you care to. We really appreciate it. Good, bad, or indifferent, because we want to keep making this better, because this is for you, the listener, the trailblazer, the manufacturing leader. We do this for you. So thanks for listening, and everybody keep manufacturing out loud, because we need you.
Need you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to MFG Out Loud with Ray Zaganto and Allison DeFore. You can subscribe and find show notes at mfgoutloud.com.